Right, evening everybody. It's 6 o'clock. I've finished my jammy dodger. So, evening, and welcome to this meeting of the Governance Committee on Tuesday, 27th of May, 2025. My name's Councillor Ian Watkinson, and I'm the chair of this committee again. Before we start this evening, I'd like to outline some housekeeping rules. There are no planned fire alarms, so if it does sound, please leave via the emergency exits. Can I request that all mobile phones are kept on silent and switched off? Thank you. Members of the committee are attending in person here at the Civic Centre. Other members of council may also dial into the meeting via Teams to observe and or participate in the meeting. Please note this meeting is live streamed on YouTube, and the web link for this can be found on the council's website. Members on Teams are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. And could I remind members to unmute themselves once they've finished speaking to enable the meeting to proceed smoothly. That should be mute themselves, not unmute. So before we start, may we have introductions around the room? So councillors first, please. We'll go in this direction.
Councillor David Shaw, representing Howick Priory in Penrith.
Councillor Margaret Smith, representing Hutton and New Longton East. New Longton and Hutton East. Got it the wrong way round.
Craig Ainsworth, one of the new independent members.
Stuart Flynn, new independent member.
Councillor Emma Stevens, Bamber Bridge East.
Councillor James Gleeson, Count Green, Gregson Lane.
Councillor Karen Walton, Farrington West, substituting for Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thanks very much for that. And officers?
Chris Walmsley, Harley Street, Scene and Waste.
Gareth Winstanley, external audit with Grant Thornton.
Jackie Murray, I'm the senior auditor.
Dawn Highton, head of audit and risk.
Tasneem Safdar, head of legal and procurement.
Neil Holton, director of finance.
Howard Norris, interim monitoring officer.
Claire Gornall, democratic services officer.
Yeah, thanks very much for those introductions. Is everybody picking that up okay? It's just sounding quite quiet up here with everybody on the microphones. Is that all right? People in the audience online? Well, we're moving online now. So anybody on Teams that'd like to introduce themselves, please, councillors and officers.
Good evening. I'm Alan Coe. I'm head of operational assets, and it's coming through crystal clear on Teams.
Okay, we just about picked that up. Anybody else? No? Okay. Right, well, we'll crack on with the agenda then. Thanks for all those introductions. So item number 1 is apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Georgia Jones from Grant Thornton and Councillor Bretherton. As stated before, Councillor Walton is present in substitution for Councillor Bretherton.
Okay, and Councillor Gabbett, he sends apologies as well, very recently. His wife's been in a traffic accident, actually. She's okay, but just happened on the way home. So he was in the building, but I've sent him home. Okay, thanks for that. So moving on to item number 2, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any interest to declare? No? Excellent. Moving on to item number 3, the minutes of the last meeting held on the 18th of March 2025. Members can be advised that this item can be found starting on page 5 of the main agenda. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of 18th of March? Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. First of all, may I welcome you back. Nice to see you. Thank you. As the only person I think that was probably, Councillor Gleeson and Flynn Stevens were here, the three of us, so I'm quite happy to propose those, but could I just make one comment before we proceed? It's on page 6. It's the third paragraph down, and it's regarding South Ribble Leisure Company. and we were informed by the then monitoring officer, Chris Moister, that he was putting together a protocol and it would be coming to us in the very near future. We haven't received that, and I'm conscious that he isn't with us now, and we've now got Mr. Norris, so could I pass that on? That it would be helpful for us all to receive that in the near future. Thank you.
Yes, it's a job to do now, isn't it? So yes, noted, and we'll get on with it.
Okay, thanks very much for that, and thanks for proposing those minutes. Do we have anybody who can second those? Thank you very much, Councillor Gleeson. Can we note those with a show of hands from everybody on the committee, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much. They are approved. That takes us on to item 4, and they're the minutes of the Constitution Task Group, held on the 18th of July 2023, the 17th of February 2025, and the 2nd of April 2025. You've been having some fun with that, I can see. So members are advised that this item can be found starting on page 9 of the agenda. Does anyone have any comments on those minutes? I'm mindful that we will be taking a standalone meeting at some point in the future where we'll be dealing with the Constitution. But if anybody wants to comment now, now's the time to do it.
Comments, Mr. Chairman. It has been a long time since the 18th of July 2023, and I don't think anybody can really remember that, but I was there, and I'm quite happy to propose them.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Smith. Anybody prepared to second those? Yeah, I'm told by the interim monitoring officer that that's okay. In which case, it feels a bit odd, doesn't it, that we need to approve those with a show of hands, even if we weren't there, but can we do that anyway? Thank you very much. Those minutes are approved, which takes us on to item number 5 and the External Auditor's Report, year ending 31st of March 2025. Members are advised that this item can be found on page 19 of the agenda. And can I invite Gareth Winstanley from Grant Thornton to present this report? Welcome, Grant.
Thank you, Chair.
You know what? I do apologise.
It's okay.
It's Gareth, not Grant. There you go. It's going so well.
That's fine. So the report that you've got before you today is our audit plan for the audit year 2024-25. I don't propose necessarily to go through it page by page. I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that, but just highlight the sort of the key points, and happy to take any questions that that members might have. So I'll probably draw your attention to page 12 of our report. And on that page, we highlight the sort of the key areas that we're going to focus on during the audit for 24-25. We undertake a risk-based audit approach. So we highlighted there 3 significant risk areas that we'll be giving particular attention to as part of our audit. Eagle-eyed members will notice that those areas aren't different from previous years, and that's not unusual. They are areas where there are either large balances in the accounts, primarily based on estimates or assumptions. So the valuation of your land and buildings and your investment properties is undertaken by external valuer, but that involves a degree of estimation, assumptions, and we look at the rationale and the supporting evidence behind those judgments that have been made. Similarly, with the valuation of the net pension fund asset or liability, we look at the work that the actuary has done there and the assumptions underpinning those valuations. We also look at what we call procedures around prevention of management override of control. So that has got a focus primarily on fraud or irregularity, and we're looking there to see whether there's been any journals that have been posted and where individuals might have been put under any undue pressure to post any journals, with a sort of a sort of consideration around possible financial misreporting. So we do work, specific targeted work, looking at journals to make sure that they are reasonable and as expected. We also highlight there on page 12 of our audit plan our materiality thresholds. You can see them there, and there's not really much change since last year, but we highlight there the materiality threshold for the group and also for the council, the single entity. Those are our planning materiality levels. Obviously, when we get the final accounts, we reassess that, and if there are significant changes, we will increase that or decrease that, but we will report that in our audit findings report later on in the year. Elsewhere in the plan, we highlight the work that we do to assess your value for money arrangements. That work looks at three sort of theme areas around financial standing, financial sustainability, governance, and what we call economy, efficiency and effectiveness. So we do some work around that and bring a separate auditor's annual report later on in the year, but we just highlight there the work that we're going to do. And then also on the page, we highlight the timing of the work and the proposed fee that's involved for the audit. The only other bit that I probably wanted to highlight within the audit plan is probably on page 26 of our plan, where we just highlight there the prior year audit recommendations that we made last year and the current position with regards to implementation of those by management. And during the course of the audit year, we will assess and review those just to see whether those issues remain this year, or hopefully those recommendations have been fully implemented. I wasn't necessarily proposing, Chair, to go through the report in any further detail, but happy to take any questions that members might have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gareth. So with that, do any members have any questions or comments? Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a question. It's on our reports on page 44. I think it's on your audit plan, page 26, and it's about the valuer who undertook the valuation surveys on the investment properties using incorrect building cost figures. I think it's at the top, issue and risk previously communicated, valuation of land and building and investment properties. They use the incorrect building cost figures. So can I ask, did we pay the valuer for this work that they undertook? What was the fee that they cost us? Was it an external company or an internal staff member that carried out the valuation surveys? And did we receive an apology or any financial reimbursement for the correct valuations which had to take place?
Thank you for your question. The issues that we highlighted there obviously came out of our audit last year. It was an external valuation firm. You've got a new valuer this year. It's not unusual to find things around the sort of valuation of land and buildings. As I mentioned earlier, it's around judgments and estimates and assumptions. We were happy that whilst there were some areas that we've highlighted there, none of those led to a material change in the accounts. And as I say, it's not unusual to find issues. We've had early discussions with the new valuer to try and head off any similar issues going forward for 24-25. With regards to the other part of your question around the fees and reimbursements, I'm not party to the exact fee, but it would be unusual to get any reimbursements because, you know, they're not unique issues that we just find here at South Ribble. But okay, thank you.
As Gareth said, it was an external valuer that we used. We have had a period of using valuers for single years. We went out to tender in that period. So we have now got a valuer who we're going to use for at least the next 3 years. That valuer has got local authority experience, actually a local authority trading company. So we did only use the previous valuer for a single year. That said, in terms of the valuations, I don't think it was anything unusual, as Gareth said, in terms of the queries back and forth. It was more of a timing issue than an error as such. And I think that it's just more kind of our learning as much as anything else in terms of saying we instruct you to do this. And I mean, we can only see what the new values will bring, but I'd certainly from our experience so far, and obviously we've met with Grant Thornton and the valuers, we expect that kind of to be corrected this year.
Thanks for that. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Funnily enough, while we were outside, we were talking about how subjective valuation can sometimes be, and it must be a very difficult thing to change your valuer and the methodologies that they operate, but particularly with the current financial uncertainties that there must be around the place. How do you audit on that? Or is it just a conversation with the valuers to ensure that their practices make sense?
It's much more than just a conversation. At the start of the audit, we write to the valuer on an annual basis with a series of sort of questions around their competency and their professionalism. We get, as I say, the details of the qualifications for each of the valuer, and we undertake an assessment whether we feel that that is a competent valuation company or individual to undertake that work, and hopefully that will give us assurance that the work that they're going to do is in line with the it's called RICS, which is this sort of institute for valuers, in line with their guidance and professional qualifications and standards. So it's much more than a conversation. As part of the audit, we will then look at a sample of revaluations that they have undertaken during the year. We'll look at the evidence and the supporting information that they've provided to the council, but also to any questions or queries that we might have. And only when we are satisfied on those individual assets that we look at those valuations, that they follow a logical and rationale, that we're comfortable with that. So, no, it's around the competency and the professionalism, but also the evidence to support the judgments.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said again this year you are going to go management controls, which we discussed, I think, at the last meeting, and I think Neil said that we're hopeful that a new system will be put in at some point in time. Are we any closer with that, and is that going to get to the point where eventually this will come off because it's been there for such a long time?
I don't think it'll ever come off, and it's not a unique risk to South Ribble. It will be in every audit plan throughout the country. We need to obtain assurance and provide you with assurance as those charged with governance that management are acting in a professional manner and they're not putting undue influence and pressure on staff to put through journals or transactions that might potentially, and I use the word potentially, manipulate the outturn position. So in all audit plans throughout the country, there will be work around providing that assurance that management and the journals that are being put through are to be expected and within the normal course of business.
I do remember the conversation, and it was specifically around journal entry, and at that point, and the journal still being on there is an element of it that the new system will address. I think the point in terms of the journal comment is it's against best practice for the industry, which includes all authorities. It's difficult in our team to create the segregation because we've got a relatively small team for a district council. I think in a unitary council, there will be much greater hierarchies, which allows that to be put in. So to kind of give the context, there's about 12 or 13 of my staff enter journals. No staff outside of finance enter journals. It's only finance staff, which is some organisations do allow non-finance staff, but it is only finance staff, and 5 can authorise. So it only takes 2 people to be on leave and suddenly there's not many people around. So I think in terms of against best practice, based on our current size of team, it'll be hard to build that structure. But what the new system will give us that the current system doesn't is that workflow that will evidence the audit trail, which I think will make Grant Thornton happier in that respect.
Thanks very much for that. Any other questions or comments from members on the committee? No, any members not on the committee? Okay, thanks very much. Thanks very much for that, Gareth. And this item is for noting when noting the report. So Thanks very much for that. And we'll move on to item 6, the Internal Audit Annual Report and Opinion 2024 to 2025. This item can be found starting on page 73 of the agenda. I'm going to invite Dawn, Head of Audit and Risk, to present the report in a second. Just to note that Alan Core, Head of Operational Assets, is online. Chris Walmsley's Head of Street Scene and Waste is with us for the closed graveyards part of this. Robert Heath, Head of Digital Services, is sat over there in the audience for those that want to know, is in attendance as an observer. And I can see Asim over there on the end. Thanks very much. Over to you, Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, this is our annual report and opinion, and the main purpose of this report is to provide you with an annual opinion on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the organisation's governance, risk management and control processes, and this is done by setting out the work that we've done throughout the course of the year and any other sources of assurance that we can rely on. So I'll not go through it line by line, but I'll just point a few key points out to yourselves. So in terms of the scope and objectives of internal audit, it's important that we maintain our independence and that there's been no restrictions in the scope of our work, and that allows us to form the opinion. So under paragraphs 8 to 11, that's where we set out to confirm to the committee that we have maintained our independence over the course of the year. If we do have any impairments, they are managed accordingly. But there hasn't been anything this year that has restricted the scope of our work. It's also important when forming the opinion that there is sufficient coverage of all aspects of the authority. And starting at paragraphs 12, that sets out the range of reviews that we've covered, and that ensures that the opinion that's formed is based on all the work that's carried out. The report continues to show the range of reviews that have been awarded, so under each different type of assurance rating that we can give. And you'll see that over the course of the past year, we've done a number of reviews. Only 4 of those reviews have been awarded limited assurance ratings. And what, as Chair said, we do have members of the senior leadership team who are here to answer any questions you may have about those. In particular, we have provided copies of all the reports to the committees over the year, and any that have been completed recently are attached to this review. In terms of the limited reports, the vulnerability management, the majority of those actions have now been implemented. There's only one outstanding in relation to the policy. I'll group fuel management and the closed graveyards together because, as we said, Chris is here and he's able to answer any questions. The closed graveyards literally has only just been finalised, so the actions won't be in a position to be implemented as yet, but he'll be able to put more substance to the report. And the review CCTV, there has been a slight delay in the implementation of the actions, and as we said, Alan is online, who will be able to answer any questions you may have about CCTV. The report then expands on any other work that we've completed, any anti-fraud and corruption work that we've carried out. The NFI is details of the NFI exercise that we've undertaken recently is contained at paragraph 27. And then what we've done also this year is we've done a table starting at paragraph 28 that sets out the assurance ratings from 22 onwards for each year. And as you can see, we are broadly in line. We're broadly consistent year on year. We're not seeing a direction of travel where we're seeing a surge in limited assurance reports. We've also done some benchmarking with all the local authorities in Lancashire. And again, we're broadly consistent with them. We're not out of kilter in the terms of the assurance ratings that we're awarding. As you'll be aware, we do follow up all our management actions. Some authorities only follow up high risk actions. We don't take that approach. We follow up everything. And we have a target implementation rate of 90%. We have fallen slightly short of that this year. However, what I would say is there's been clear evidence over the past 12 months that with the stability of the leadership team, you can actually see that actions are being owned more. There will always be instances where we have revised dates, because we could agree an action with a person one day and then, 2 weeks later, a key member of staff leaves. There will always be instances where we need to revise dates, but overall we are seeing an improvement in the ownership of actions. Risk management, there is a separate report on the agenda for, so I'll discuss that in more detail at that point in time. And similarly, we've got the annual governance statement, so I'll not go through corporate governance as well. As I mentioned, we can place reliance on other sources of assurance, and we do that not only when we're forming our opinion, but when we're doing the audit plan as well. So we take into account if there's any agencies carrying out external inspections, that we can place reliance on their work. If there's any internal services that are doing pieces of work that we can rely on. All that is taken into consideration to avoid duplication when we're doing our work, but also we can rely on it when forming the opinion. So again, as members will be aware, we do perform audits for South Ribble Leisure Limited, and over the past 12 months we've carried out 3 separate reviews, and we also did a governance assurance workshop with them. That identified a range of actions that they needed to implement. They are in the process of implementing them, but until we can gain the assurance that they have been actions and are fully embedded, we're only able to award limited assurance at this stage. But in terms of the council, based on the work that we've undertaken and the other sources of assurance we can take into consideration, we consider that the overall adequacy and effectiveness of governance, risk management controls are adequate for the financial year 31st of March 25. There is a separate report on the agenda about our compliance with the public sector internal audit standards, and that gives you the assurance that you can place reliance on the work that we've done and the opinion that's given today. And finally, in the report, there is just our key performance indicators. And as you can see, we've largely exceeded all our targets, with the exception of the implementation of actions which I've included above. So that concludes the report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Dawn, and thanks for all your work on this. Members on the committee, any comments or questions? No. Members? Oh, no.
Are we taking the reports individually, or are we taking them in the whole? Because there are quite a few reports.
I think the intention was to take them en bloc as a whole. So if you wanted to come in on any of those in particular, then now would be the time to do it.
Right. I'll have to remember where I'm up to then.
All right.
On the council tax one, as regards the payments to single residents and that sort of thing, which I think is going to now be cross-referenced to the national database. It seems that the date put down for completion is approximately 12 months it's going to take, which seems quite between 10 and 12 months. It seems quite a long time to have to spend looking at something like this. Is it because of the volume of it that it's going to cause so long to actually get through it, or just the fact that people don't reply in the mail?
Is it in the report or the council tax report? Sorry, can I just see what page you're referring to, please? Yeah, let's take that.
It's included as a project on the service business plan, and the date is March 2026. Another one is March, is May 2026.
That will be the end date. Yeah. So like you said, I think in the actual my report, the volume is really high of the number of single person discounts. So they break it up over the course of the year. So that will be the date at which it is completed by, but that doesn't mean to say it's not ongoing over the course of the year.
And the reason that the volume is so high, is it because it is a while since this has actually been focused on? And should we be doing a bit more maybe regularly to once we've got through this, do you think there should be sort of a review every 6 months or something?
No, it's a review of all single person discounts. So that's just anybody who can claim single person discount. That's not anything we can influence. If they're entitled to claim single person discount, then that's the number of single people claiming that discount is high. That's just, it's nothing that we do.
On the one for Salford Technical Audit Services, it's been rated a 5. Would you call that adequate or a bit higher? Or?
We class that as adequate.
To my notes.
That's absolutely fine. I can see Councillor Walton's going to dive in while you check where you're up to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it's page 86, 87 about the South Ribble Leisure non-compliance with the governance framework and limited assurance. So it seems as though this has been going on for quite a while, and it says over the past 12 months, internal audit have carried out 3 separate reviews. So what steps are we taking to address the problem? And is this matter being treated as urgent?
So we do different reviews, different types of reviews. So if similarly to the council, we agree an audit plan with the board of directors, and we cover different aspects of the service. The main reason why it was given a limited assurance this time was the governance assurance workshop that we did. I think when we report to the board, 2 of the reviews have actually got adequate ratings and one's got limited. So it is a mix, but until us as a service, as internal audit, we get that assurance that the actions that we identified in that governance framework are both implemented and embedded, we're not able to alter our opinion at this stage. Now, my understanding is following that workshop, they've made significant progress in implementing those actions.
Just have another question as well about on page 144 about the closed churchyards. There we go. It's so could you explain which 3 churchyards are under the council's responsibility? And does the council have any duties of care involving other churchyards in the borough, as this could cause a serious health and safety risk in the future?
We're only responsible for the 3 closed churchyards, and I'll be honest, my mind's just gone completely blank now in terms of which ones they are. So St Leonard's is one of them, and I'll have to come back to you on the other 2.
St Mary's,
St Mary's is one, yeah.
And St Saviour's in Bamber Bridge.
Yeah. Thank you.
So are there any other that we are or be responsible for in the future, near future?
We only have the 3 currently, and I'm not aware of any more that are coming to us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
It's regarding payroll, and it's on page 139. And it states in the remaining instances, the former employee continued to be paid for 7 months after cessation of employment. However, we've been unable to ascertain the circumstances relating to this due to the inability of HR services to provide further information and evidence of this employee. Seems a very strange situation that somebody was paid for 7 months and you couldn't basically get to the bottom of why. Have we any idea, or can we find out? And has that employee repaid the money if the money was paid out for 7 months?
Yeah, but during the course of our review, it was still a live case. So we made inquiries of the manager who didn't have the information to hand when we asked. At the outcome of a review as well, it was still being progressed. So it was known the value of money that was paid out, and we had contacted the employee and we had started recovery action, but it was still not come to a conclusion by the time we finished our report.
And the last one is the graveyards. And I must say that having read it, it was a rather disappointing read regarding the fact that it was reviewed by external auditors. I've lost my place again. It's all these papers. It was reviewed in August 2021, and yet a number of the issues that were obviously highlighted at that time are still very much outstanding. The rating of them, the majority of the things that have been reviewed, the lack of a council policy for the effective management of closed graveyards, and the breach of council policy legislation and regulations. And also there would appear not to be any budget. It is a very difficult one, this, and I can't say as I necessarily agree with the legislation that allows a closed graveyard to be passed over to the local authority to then be looked after and maintained, with all the problems that I'm sure come. But nevertheless, that is the legislation, and therefore we have got to abide by it. And the fact that we are have got a health and safety issue, particularly with some of the older gravestones that haven't been attended to. I'm just wondering how on earth are we going to get this sorted out if there's no budget for it? And will that be an issue that is going to be pressed with the senior management team? And also, will the inspections now start to make sure that our staff are safe?
In terms of budget, the intention is to undertake the vast majority of these inspections in-house using staff that we've got. So we have previously trained some staff up and looking to get a course. We've identified a course to train up a couple more staff so we can adequately resource that. Inspections of memorials over 2.5 metres falls outside of that training, so needs to be picked up by an external contractor. Again, we've identified the cost for that, discussed it at SMT in terms of identifying the budget for that, and then once we've undertaken the inspections and we've identified what remedial works are required, then obviously we can pick this up moving forward. But the intention would be that ultimately it's the responsibility of the grave owner. So, we would contact the grave owners and ask them to pick up the remedial work, because they do own the headstone. But obviously we'll have to take action if that doesn't happen.
I understand what you're saying about the gravestones, but as I understand it, there is quite a lot of other things that are part of this policy that need to be put on a good footing. And the fact that there is a lack of budget for doing this seems to me that something is amiss here. We really need to get to the bottom of, particularly about the policy. The lack of policy in this. It's a very, very important health and safety issue, and it does concern me greatly that we have got such a damning report, really, with everything apart from the lack of budget is limited. I would like to think that we will be making some progress, and it could be reported back within the 6 to 9 months that we have actually made some progress on this.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there. Yes, please do.
Just on the budget point, it's less that there's no budget there at the minute. There isn't a budget there at the minute, but it's scoping the works to understand what budget we would need. We would look to find the resources from whatever we've got available, but until we know fully what that cost is, if some of it can be done internally, if some of it's needed externally, if the results of the inspections come back and it's whatever figure, we obviously will need to quantify that before we can set the budget to put it in place anyway.
I agree with you. It's a very difficult situation. As I say, I don't particularly agree with the legislation because I think, it's a bit hard on the council to actually have to do this work. But nevertheless, some of these issues were identified at the last time there was a review, which was in 2021. And we're now in 2025. So I do feel that there is a matter of urgency with this now, that we really do have to tackle it head on, whatever the cost. And
Yes, so thanks very much for that. And I think to echo those comments, I hear what you're saying about needing to know what the cost is going to be, and I don't expect you to be able to say right now how long it will take for you to ascertain what those costs are. But I think we'd appreciate a progress report sooner rather than later on that, Councillor Shaw.
Just something occurred to me. Is there an ongoing conflict with, for example, church policy with respect to our ongoing maintenance of their graveyards?
interest payable and no, are we back? We're back. So there's no interest payable and there's no gross debt. So we are, again, it's relatively rare for any local authority not to have interest payable and not to have any debt. Even among our kind of near neighbours, you'll see that most people have some form of debt somewhere on the lines, but we are still an authority without debt and without interest payable. In respect of fees and charges, we're at the lower end of fees and charges. I think that's possibly reflective of the previous one. Often if you invest in capital projects, that generally generates income. So obviously when Jubilee Gardens opens, we'll see an increase in terms of income generated from our assets. So we may jump a little in those categories. And if we do any more of the investment from as a result of the town deal, the Leyland Town deal, if there's income generated, you may start to see us moving across those categories because there are a number of things in the capital programme. And then the last two indicators, I think the council tax requirement has stayed relatively stable around 50%. Most authorities are seeing that council tax is starting to go from, has been around 60% of their income to slowly dropping, and that's being replaced by both business rates, but also generating income internally. And I think particularly the last one, indicator number 8, for anyone who's seen the budget papers will know that we gain really significantly in South Ribble from business rates growth. And as a result, we are the top against our near neighbours. It's both an incredible benefit, but a key risk for the authority going forward. And that was reflected in the budget papers that came forward. The budget gap next year indicated the potential loss of that. The consultation on business rates and the changes to it is open at the moment. So we're expecting to hear more late summer possibly on what implications that might mean for us in funding terms. But I think we kind of acknowledge that as a risk because it is so significant to us. That we've done so well in the past means that there is a potential greater risk in future. And I think that's it in terms of indicators.
Well, thanks very much, Neil. Thanks for walking us through that. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that report? I think you can push your button now, Karen. Give it a go.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment really about the size of the graphs. They're very interesting, and benchmarking is a tool that's very useful, but they're so tiny. And even, on your screen, or I've printed them off, they're so tiny. It's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Smith?
I think there's a couple of things that highlight in here to me is that when you're talking about the council tax, the pooling arrangement has been very significant for us. And whether that will continue, I think is a potential risk, a danger to us. I mean, what is it, over £1 million we're getting from that? And that seems to me one thing that's highlighted here. And you're right about the business rate. I mean, we have done incredibly well, but if there's suddenly a change in how we collect the business rate, it could really be very significant to us. So while they're very interesting, they certainly also push up a few problems that may be sitting there down the line for us. But somehow I don't think they're quite as relevant as they were when they first came out. There seems to be something lacking in them somehow to me. I don't know. But at the beginning, I thought they were, the first few years, I thought, well, these are really, really interesting. But now I'm not so sure.
I think that's a fair comment on the relevance. And I think that probably the difficulty is we just don't have that good benchmarking in local authorities because we all do things slightly differently, which makes it very difficult when we get government returns and try to compare them because you endlessly then try and pick apart. I think it's better to have something than nothing, but I agree with you in terms of I think they set off with an objective and it's been apparent through the analysis of it that it doesn't quite always tell the story that we get. And in terms of financial risk, yeah, I mean, with the government's committed to a fair funding review and a review of business rates and a review of various others. I think understanding the implications ahead of next year's budget will be difficult, but it will be the knock-on effect of all those changes. So we might get a negative answer on one and a positive answer on another, but it'll be mapping them through as they come through.
Thank you, Neil. Any other questions or comments? Members on the committee, members not on the committee? Okay, thanks very much for that. And thanks again, Neil. That item is for noting. Takes us on to item 12, the annual governance statement. And 269 is where you can find this on your tablets. And Howard is going to present this for us. Thanks.
Thank you, members. This is a report you receive every year, and you're being asked to approve the draft annual governance statement. And as the report says, the council is required to ensure it has in place a sound system of governance, that it regularly reviews the effectiveness of that system, and it continuously seeks to achieve best value in service delivery. And as part of that, the council is required, an absolute requirement, to publish an annual governance statement. The statement itself is developed alongside the statement of accounts, but assesses the governance framework for the whole council and all of its activities. Then the preparation of our report or our statement, an approach is taken to its development, being based on the guidance contained in the CIPFA and SOLIS codes. The guidance sets out that we are obliged to develop and maintain an up-to-date local code of governance consistent with the core principles. The annual governance statement itself is required to be signed by the chief executive and the leader, but it's developed and owned collectively by senior officers and members. And another point from the CIPFA guidance is that there should be a review undertaken by a body such as the governance committee that has not been involved in the AGS. And so that's why it's here for your consideration tonight. Continuing members will probably recognise the layout of the AGS itself, which is Appendix 1. We've not sought to reinvent the wheel. It's a format you've seen in previous years. The only things that have changed, of course, are the detail in the report relating to the previous year, because it's a backward-facing document in the first instance, and also in the matrix at the end, the position on the presently existing tasks and the identification of tasks for this year for internal audit, etc., to focus upon to again enhance and improve the governance framework of the council. Should I not say anything else on the report? That's a basic summary.
Okay, thanks very much, Howard, and thanks for all your work on this and anybody else that was involved. Any questions or comments from members on the committee? No? Yes? Councillor Mrs. Smith.
Wouldn't let you down. It's on page 282. 3 complaints to the Ombudsman. 1 complaint was upheld and addressed. I wondered if it's possible to know the ins and outs of that. If not, it's I understand. And the comment on page 283 at the bottom, where it says there's evidence of weaknesses to the design and or inconsistent application of controls in some areas, which put the achievement of particular objectives at risk. That seems slightly concerning, that, there are control weaknesses. And also when we get to 285, it's the lack of awareness of project management. This has been around, I think, last year. I think it wasn't fully addressed, and it's come back. And the lack of awareness of the politics and the guidance and accessibility around that. I presume some work will start to be done in the near future around these particular issues. But I am, as I say, concerned about this weaknesses and inconsistencies that has been alluded to at the bottom of that page.
And to just try and address the matters as you raised them, I haven't got to hand the Ombudsman matter that's been dealt with. I'm sure I can locate it and report you subsequently should you still wish to see it. As to areas that have been identified as weaknesses, the fact they've been identified normally means that work is undertaken to reinforce them and make them less of a weakness. The absolute detail in those areas, I'm sorry, is not in my possession at this time.
I can quite understand that. It's no problem at all. But I would appreciate, and I think probably the committee would do it about the Ombudsman. If you could let us know, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Smith, and we would all appreciate that. Any other questions or comments from members on the committee? Members not on the committee? Okay, so this is an item that we need to vote on. So can I have a proposer? We need to approve the draft annual governance statement. A proposer. Oh, we're going to do it this way around. So Councillor Gleeson's going to propose. Oh, I'm looking that way. And seconded by Councillor Walton. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That is carried and approved. Which takes us on to item 13, which has been withdrawn. So we will let you know about the date that standalone meeting is going to take place and give you as much notice as possible for that, and chance to work your way through the online version or the hard copy version of that. And with that, that's the end of the meeting. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for tolerating and putting up with and improvising with the sound issues. And I know that's not your fault. This is a perennial problem in this space. Thanks very much for the welcome back, and I will see you all next time. Thank you.